In this video, we're going to talk about magnitude of slope. Before we can talk about magnitude of slope, we need to talk about magnitude. Magnitude is the distance a number is from zero. This is also known as the absolute value of a number. When we look at the absolute value of a number, we ignore the positive and negative. So that we are just focusing on the distance the number is from zero. Essentially, magnitude looks at the size of something, or the size of a number. Absolute value is written like this. The bars mean absolute value. Let's look at some examples. When I ask what is the magnitude of -3, I'm asking you how far is -3 from 0. In order to look at that, we look at the absolute value of -3. The absolute value of -3 means we ignore the positive or negative, so it just becomes 3. So that's our magnitude. I encourage you to pause this video and try the next two before we continue. What is the magnitude of -100? Well, same thing. I'm going to look at the absolute value of -100. I ignore the negative symbol and that becomes 100. So the magnitude of -100 is positive 100. And then what is the magnitude of positive 87? Well, that's just positive 87. Ignoring the symbols and just looking at the distance from 0. Positive 87 is 87 spaces from 0. So when do we use magnitude with slope? We do this when we want to determine which line is steeper or flatter when we're comparing two lines. So when comparing two lines, and determining, no, that's not how you spell determining, sorry guys. Determining which line is steepest or steeper / flattest. I don't like that. Steeper or flatter is better. Not of. So when do we use magnitude of slope? When we are comparing two lines and determining which line is steeper or flatter. We also can look at it. We can look at magnitude of slope to see the steepness of one line. It's important to note that if you have a zero slope, that's a horizontal line. Which is the flattest line you can have. Right, if I look at a graph on the XY plane, a horizontal line is the flattest line that I can have. I can say if I have an undefined slope, that's a vertical line. And that's the steepest line I can have. Again, looking at an XY plane, vertical line goes up and down. It doesn't get much more steep than that. So how do we actually determine which line is steeper and which line is flatter? So to determine which line is steeper, you can follow 3 steps. First step is to, of course, calculate the slope. Slope is the measure of the steepness. Slope measures the steepness of a line. So if we want to figure out which one is steeper, we obviously need to look at slope. The second thing we need to do is find the slope of each line. Second, we're going to find the magnitude of each slope. Again, you're looking at the absolute value of each one. And then third is the larger number from step number 2 is the steeper slope. Remember, the positive and negative don't matter anymore. So we're looking just at the positive of every number. To determine which line is flatter, you do the same steps as above, same number 1 and number 2 step. But our third step is a little different because I want to look at which line is flatter, so I want to find the smaller number. Out of my slopes, or out of my magnitude. I think this will make more sense when we do an example, but essentially, the steeper the line, the larger the number is going to be. The flatter the line, the smaller the number is going to be. And again, ignoring positive or negative. So let's look at this example where I'm given a graph and it says, which line is steeper, the blue or the red line? Use slopes to justify your answer. So let's first find the slope of each line. A little reminder, if you're using a graph, we want to look at rise over run. So I see a point on my graph down here and a point on my graph right on the y-intercept. So I rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Plus 7 is my rise. Plus 1 is my run. So for the blue line, well, that doesn't say blue. There we go. For the blue line, my slope is 7 over 1, or just positive 7. For the red line, I can choose any 2 points and look at the rise over run between them. Rise, 2, run, 1. So my slope is 2. If I look at the magnitude, or the absolute value of each of these, they don't change. And since 7 is greater than 2, then the blue line is steeper. And it's asking me for the steeper line up here, so I want the bigger magnitude. In question B, it's important to note that they're asking which line is flatter. So I want the smaller magnitude this time. Again, they asked me to use slopes to justify my answer. This time, though, I'm given 2 points, so I need to use y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to calculate my slope of each line. First, I'll do line A. So 15 minus negative 3 over negative 2 minus 1. 15 minus negative 3 is the same as 15 plus 3. Negative 2 minus 1 is negative 3. So I have 18 over negative 3. Negative 6 is the slope of line A. The slope of line B, 6 minus negative 2 over 2 minus 0. 6 plus 2 over 2. 8 over 2. Positive 4. Again, I need to ignore a positive or negative, so that's where the absolute value comes in. I need to take the absolute value of each slope and then compare. Absolute value of negative 6 is positive 6. Absolute value of positive 4 is positive 4. I'm looking for the smaller magnitude this time because I want the I want the flatter line. The smaller magnitude is 4. So since 4 is the smaller magnitude, then line B is the flatter line.